Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vishishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Yo antaha pravishya mama vacha imam prashuptam sanjeevayati akhila shakti dharaswadam nanyam shtahasta charana shravanatvagadim. प्राणान् नमो भगवते पुरुषाय तुभ्यं लसतु श्रीमदानन्दतीर्थेन्दुर्नो हृदम्बरे यद्वचश्चन्द्रिका स्वान्तसन्तापं विनिकृन्तति पदवाक्यप्रमाणज्ञान् प्रणम्य शिरसा गुरून् व्याकरिष्ये यथाभूतं विष्णुतत्त्वविनिर्णयम्. So good afternoon, good morning and good evening everyone. We make our onward journey in Isha Upanishad. So what have we done so far? One verse and a bit of the second verse. So before we start, let's just remember all the Rishis, Svayambu, Manu, Dadichi, Yagnavalkya, Kanva Rishi, and all the Acharyas who have given us the commentary and Bhashyas on Isha Upanishad. Let's also pray to the Devata for this Upanishad, which is Yagna Namaka Paramatma. And the Chandas for this is Anuštub and Trishtub primarily. But there is also Jagati Chandas also in Isha Upanishad, which is something that I did not cover in my previous talk. So this is a slight revision. So the Chandas for Isha is Anuštub, Trishtub, and Jagati. So with that spirit, let's keep moving. And before I get started, today I have a quiz right at the beginning of today's session. Okay, so I've got a quiz around the Chandas, Anuštub, Trishtub, and Jagati. Okay, Anuštub, as you know, has got 38 syllables. Trishtub has got 44 syllables and Jagati has got 48 syllables. So how are these chandas constructed? 8 times 4 is 32. 11 times 4 is 44. 12 times 4 is 48. So 8, 11, and 12. So these chandas are not there by random because there is a design here. There is a design in our Vedic system as to the significance of chandas. So who is going to tell us here what is the significance of the number 8, 11, and 12 in Vedic philosophy? Any quick takers for this? Okay, no worry.
Number of words.
Sorry.
Each word. It's the number of words that's actually in that shloka or that in.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You're right. 8 number of syllables.
Letters, syllables.
Syllables. But why 8, 11, and 12? What is that special significance of Anuštub, Trishtub, and Jagadish? So I'll give you the answer. The 8, 11, 12 actually represents Vasu, Rudra, and Adityas. There are 8 Vasus, 11 Rudras, and 12 Adityas. Think about this, because when you do this Anuštub and Trishtub and Jagati Chandas and you think about number 8, 11, and 12, there is another level of philosophy that is attached to it. But I'm introducing this idea today so that as we make progress in Isha Upanishad, we can start thinking about that manana of Vasurudra and Adityas also. Okay, so Om Ishavasyam idang sarvam yatkincha jagatyam jagat tena tyaktena bunjitaha ma gridaha kasyasvidhanam kuruvanneve iha kuru karmani jijiji vishet shatang samaha evam tvayi na anyato asti na karma lipyate nare asurya namate lokaha andena tamasa avrutaha tamste prati Pretya abhigacchati ekecha atmahano janaha. So what I hopefully, if we have time permitting, we should be able to do the third verse and also the rest of the second verse. So let's do a very brief recap of what did we do. So there is a chat message that's come through. No chat message. So what is going on here? So let's revise what we did last time. So last week we spent a lot of time thinking about this particular verse, Kuruvanneve iha kuru karmani. And we understood karma can be, the two roots of karma could be something like kru. Kru means work and action. The ones that we use using our karma indriyas, that we do action. So that is, of course, kru. And then there is the other etymology of karma, kara and ma. Kara is duty or tax. And being aware of one's duty and tax is also called karma. So then we also established last week that it is the jiva who is the doer, okay? Not a material jada such as antakarana. Antakarana is matter. It is a jada. It is not capable of self-initiated action, and only a sentient being is capable of self-initiated action. Okay, so we established that last week, and we had a brief discussion of doership of Jiva. We said Jiva is a doer, yes, but he is a dependent doer. Jiva is a non-doer, also yes, because he is not an independent doer. So this is something that we need to understand. What is dependent doership and what is independent doership? Okay, that person who does actions and transactions of his life, constantly reminding himself that he is only a dependent doer, and that there is another person who is controlling or giving him facility to do his action, that person is the dependent doer. And whatever he does, he offers it as a submission to the Supreme. So we understood, we dissected out that word iha in great detail. Iha not just means in this place or in this world or now or using the sadhana sharira or here. In a primary sense, particularly with the contextual relevance of what we are discussing, because Yajnanamaka Paramatma is right in front of Svayambu or Manu in this Upanishad, right? So Svayambu or Manu is offering somebody who is right in front of him, and he says, Iha, I am offering all my actions to you, Paramatma. Okay, so there Iha primarily denotes Paramatma or Yajnanamaka Paramatma here. And Svayambu Manu is doing it as a sacrifice to the Lord. So that is the dependent doership, a concept of total surrender, which we will explore a little bit in the first half of today's satsang. Yeah. So that is, what does the total surrender actually means from our perspective? Yeah. And then, of course, there are the 99.99% of us, including all of us here most of the time, that we actually think we are the independent doers. And in all the things that we have done, we have forgotten that there is a Paramatma who is there as our Antaryaman, who is actually making note of a few things and allowing us to do some actions. Okay. The moment we forget that we are in that position, but assume independence of doership, that is when we start incurring karmic imprints on our linga sharira. So that is also a concept that we touched upon briefly, not briefly, in great detail last week. Okay, and then Harish was talking about na aham karta harihi karta, the concept propounded by Gita in Gita Tatparya Nirnaya by Srimad Acharya, who says in every action think about na aham karta harihi karta. Yeah, so here is a question for us. So this is a philosophical problem which only Veda Vyasa has resolved, as far as I know. But let's discuss this. Yeah, we are talking about the kartrutva, the doership of jivas right here. So here is a big question that was asked by this great Catholic philosopher, Saint Augustine of Hippo, in 400 and what is that, 4th century, 5th century AD. He's asking a very profound philosophical question that talks about the doership of the souls. Yeah. So the key question here is, if God is omnipotent and is such a powerful being, why does God not make all of us do only good deeds? Why is it that some of us do good deeds, but some of us don't? Yeah, we have spoken so much about the doership of Jiva, right? And that the Jiva is a dependent doer and is dependent on the Supreme Being. Then you could ask the question, if this Supreme Being or Paramatma is so gracious and kind, why is he allowing Jivas to do bad deeds? Okay, so that is one question that I think is very relevant in this discussion. So this is exactly the same question that Saint Augustine of Hippo, was one of the great Catholic philosophers, in his book called The Confessions. He asks a few very interesting questions. Who made me? Did not God, who is not only good, but goodness itself, make me? Whence then can I to will evil? and will good so that I am thus justly punished? Who set this in me and implanted in me this plant of bitterness, seeing that I was made holy of my sweet God? Beautiful statements from Saint Augustine, who's asking this fundamental question: if God is goodness himself and he is omnipotent, why is he not making all the souls do the good things? But why is it that 99.99% of us are constantly doing bad deeds? Okay, this is a key question at this point, which I just want to address here in this slide, and this will give us the comprehensive view of what is it that Svayambu Manu is saying when he says Kuruvanneve iha kuru karmani jijiji vishet shatang samaha in the next verse. So the next half of the first line, to understand that, we probably need to have some insight into this. Okay, so the question asked by Saint Augustine is very easily resolved by Vedic philosophy. This is a problem that many philosophical schools have struggled to address about the concept of the concept of partiality and cruelty of God when there is evil all around us. Okay, and it also hits at the problem of what we call as free will. Okay? Questions like, what is the origin or source of free will? Our ability to initiate and perform action that obviously has consequences in ours and others' life. Why do some perform good deeds? Why bad deeds? And why is someone a millionaire where someone can't even afford a meal a day? If God is omnipotent, why does he not transform all things bad to good instantly? Does this mean God is partial and cruel? Is this the final proof that God does not exist? Okay, so these are all basic core problems of Jiva Kartrutva, doership of the Jivas. Kuruvanneve iha kuru karmani, as Svayambu Manu says. Now, for that, our founding father and our guru, Vedavyasa, has done a adhikaranam called Kartrutva Adhikaranam in Vedanta Sutra. So I would humbly request you to Google that and find out what is this sutra called. Adrishta Niyamat. There is one sutra, one line. That is what Vedavyasa has given, one formula to address all these questions, and an instant answer to Saint Augustine of Hippo. And I only wish that Saint Augustine actually knew in the 4th century what Vedavyasa has said, and he had already given the answer to this problem. So what is that answer? So here is the overall scheme of what the Kartrutva of Jiva actually means. Purushakya Prayatna. So what does that mean? These are the individual effort that we all make. Okay. Then we make our individual karmas or effort based on anadi karma. We make our individual efforts to do things which is influenced by the anadi karma, because the anadi karma results in the environment in which we operate. The kind of human body or sadhana sharira that we acquire, all these things are influenced by anadi karma. Now, what is the origin of anadi karma? Anadi karma comes from Jiva Swabhava. The reason is not all souls have the same type of karmic imprints. Each soul has a different type of karmic imprints and does different types of effort. Okay, so this is a key problem here and an idea. So there are 3 ideas here: Jiva Swabhava, the intrinsic nature of souls; Anadi karma, that is the karmic imprints on the linga sharira; and Purushakya Prayatna, our own individual effort. So all these 3 are taken into consideration, and what Paramatma does as our Antaryamin is, he provides that facility for the jivas to act out their predisposition, taking into account their swabhava, their anadi karma, and Purushakya Prayatna. Okay, so that is where the independence of God comes from. He is not partial, he is not cruel. There are various types of jivas with various types of attributes. And what God does is just allows the jivas to play out their attributes so that they can find their destination. So here is the final question to this problem. If God is omnipotent, then why does he not change the nature of souls itself? so that they all do nishkama karmas? That is a possibility, isn't it? So who is going to answer that question? So this is a quiz, today's first quiz, as to if God is omnipotent and if he has the capacity to change the nature of souls. That is the first question. Does he have the capacity to change the nature of souls? If he has, then why has he not changed the nature of souls so that they all do good deeds? So who wants to take this up? Any views there? Why
Because he is Devam.
So, sorry, Prahlaji, go on, yeah?
Because he is Devam. This is his play.
You think, okay, you think it's his play. Okay, that's an interesting point. We'll hold on to that idea. We have a Zoom user who has raised his hand. So please identify yourself and tell us, give us the answer.
Sorry, it's me. Something is gone wrong with my Zoom account, so I will change it.
No
so
problem.
You have given the answer by Gita 2.12.
Do you want to recite it, Pragnesh, and give us the answer?
Natvevaham jatu nasam natvam neme janadipa nataiva na bhavishyama sarve vavaya mata param. And you have translated into English by Black Arrow. So it is said that he goes by the rule of the Lord. And the rule is also made by the Lord and brought into practice by the Lord, followed meticulously by the Lord, that he should bestow results as per these three criteria without altering Jiva's eternal nature. Thank you.
Thanks, Pragnesh. So yes, thank you both for that. So one key idea.
Hello.
Yes.
This is Shobha here.
Yeah,
from
Shobha, go for it. Yeah.
Connecticut. From Connecticut. This thing. I would say the change of swabha, it is swabhava. It is swabhava means you cannot change the swabhava. And if you want to change the soul, which means you are killing the soul. That is my take.
Wonderful, Shobhaji. 100% agree with you on that. So that particular verse 2:12 exactly is illustrating what Shobhaji has just informed and informed all of us. That is, Krishna has said, Natve vaham jatunasam, natvam neme janadipaha, nachaiva na bhavishyamaha, sarve vayam ataha param. He has said, there was never a point, I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, i.e. all these souls. There will never be a point where the souls have not existed, or existing, or will not exist in the future. In the sense, the souls are eternal. Souls are eternal is a fundamental Vedantic concept. Remember Katha Upanishad, with Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadati Kaman Tam Atmastam Ye Anupashyanti Diraha Tesham Shashwatam Sukam Na Itaresham. Remember that verse, Nityo Nityanam. Same thing here. That souls are eternal and uncreated is a fundamental Vedantic concept. No Vedantic philosopher has been brave enough to say the souls were created or the souls will be destroyed. Yeah, that is a fundamental dictum of Vedantic philosophy. So Shobhaji, thank you so much for that answer. Because if the Jiva Swabhava is going to be changed, then that actually means that a Jiva A has been destroyed and a new Jiva with a new Swabhava has been made. So what Paramatma does is, these are all the rules in the Vedic constitution of how this whole existence has to operate. So what God does is, he limits himself to operate under that Vedic constitution of what the Veda says, and he self-limits. Self-limitation is a very positive attribute. Yeah. So that is what Paramatma does, and he does not destroy the souls because the Vedic constitution is like that. So God takes these three qualifications, Jiva Swabhava, Anadi Karma, and Purushakya Prayatna, to allow the Jivas to act out their individual things. Remember this Mundaka Upanishad, Yata Pruthivyam Oshadayaha Sambhavanti. We have done this before, just like how a neem seed becomes a neem tree, a mango seed becomes a mango tree. The neem tree never becomes a mango tree. Similarly, the Jivas have their intrinsic nature and they play out their intrinsic nature in this material universe called the soil or called the land. Manjunathji, you got a contribution. So you need to unmute, Manjunathji.
Sorry, it's me. The Jiva Swabhava, intrinsic nature, cannot be changed. But when we are doing all these classes and when our Swabhava, that is gunas only change, isn't it?
I think it's only your mental state, your material, the coverings that you have, those things may change, because if your Jiva Swabhava is one that, so again, Shilaji, never forget the chariot analogy of Katha Upanishad. If the Jiva Swabhava is like towards God, then the mind will automatically be brought and the horses are going to be controlled. So that is how it works. We can change our mind, our material mind, but our Jiva Swabhava is pretty much the same. Yeah. So hope that answers that question.
Yeah. Okay,
So here in this situation, so what is going on here? Manvantara. Let's think about the Svayambu Manvantara. We are doing Isha Upanishad, right? So there is a Svayambu Manvantara where Svayambu Manu has to make his individual effort to save this Manvantara because Asuras are there trying to destroy it. He has to do his duty, which is his karma. What is his duty? To look after the Manvantara. And what is his intrinsic nature? He is an exalted being in the Vedic pantheon. He is the 10th rank. Okay, he is the 10th rank in the Vedic pantheon. He's an exalted being. So he is doing his job based on his intrinsic nature. He's putting an individual effort and he's doing an action that is to protect this Manvantara as a dedication to the Supreme. So now the question is, how long has one to do this kind of approach of submission and sacrifice to the Supreme? So the next half of this line gives a beautiful answer. Kuruvanneve iha kurukarmani jijiji vishet shatang samaha. Okay, so this is easy. We can also make it complicated, but let's keep it simple due to time constraints. Jijiji vishet shatang samaha. So you do this karma yoga for as long as you live. Shatang samaha means, shata means 100. So 100 years. So you could say humans live 100 years, but there is another way of looking at it. All our lives are defined by the total number of breaths that we have. And the total number of breaths that we have defines how long we are going to be in this world. And our full innings here is metaphorically said as 100 years, 100 earth years. Okay, metaphorically for us is 100 earth years, but actually our life is dictated by the number of breaths that we have, and that is fixed at the time of birth. Okay, 100 years. Now look at 100 years for Chaturmukha Brahma. We know that here, I hope you can see this, 311.04 trillion years. That is his 100 years. But this trillion years is earth years. Look at Swayambu Manu, our Swayambu Manu's age. He is going to be around for 306.72 million years, 71 Divya Yugas, that is his duration. And that is his full 100 years. But these are the earth years, 306.72 million earth years. So everything is relative, right? So similarly for humans, our 100 years is dictated by the total number of births that we take. Total number of breaths, not births, breaths that we have permission to take when we have the sadhana sarira. So the idea here is that we do karma yoga for as long as we are alive. And Swayambhu Manu is that's what he is doing all his life. And then here is a clear definition of what that karma yoga is. Because what is our aim of karma yoga? One is that we don't accumulate future karmic imprints, and at the same time, through karma yoga, jnanottara karma, we start ascending in that journey. Then the jnana and karma becomes bhakti, and then that bhakti then elicits divine grace. And when that divine grace happens, we get aparoksha jnana. When the aparoksha jnana happens, all our karmic imprints are destroyed. Karma kshaya, as Veda Vyasa describes in the 4th Adhyaya. That happens. So that is the process that is clearly discussed in the Vedas. Okay. So here Swayambhu Manu says, Evam tvayi na anyad eto asti na karma lipyate nare. So very clear. Na karma lipyate nare. Okay, let's look at that first. Okay, karma means we have just discussed all this. Lipya means what? That which sticks. Sticks where? Sticks on the linga sharira. That karma that sticks on the linga sharira, to whom? Nare. Nare means nariyate iti naraha. Nariyate means that which is an indestructible thing. What is that indestructible thing? That is the jiva. That indestructible jiva which has got this linga sharira, where this karma lepa, that the karmic imprints will not happen. Na karma lipyate nare. When? Kuruvanneve iha kuru karmani. Jijiji Vishets Shatang Samaha. So that is how you look at it. You will never incur any karmic imprints on your linga sharira if your actions are in this spirit. Kuruvanneve iha kuru karmani. Okay. And then here Svayambu Manu also gives us another caution. Evam tvayi na anyad yeto asti. So let's split it open. Na anyad yetaha asti. Okay. Yetaha means like this. Like this means what? Like this approach. Approach of what? Approach of not having karmic imprints. Na anyad asti. There is no other approach. Okay. There is no other way in which you could avoid karmic imprints. There is only one approach to avoid karmic imprints. What is that approach? Kuruvanneve iha kuru karmani. Okay, beautiful verse. The whole of the Karma Yoga of Gita is actually summarized in this verse. And again, my humble request is, as we make our journey through Isha Upanishad, there are only 18 verses. So I think we should all memorize this 18 verses, and perhaps maybe at the end, when we finish Isha Upanishad, we should recite this without even seeing these verses. We should be able to recite these verses. The more we do manana on this, the more the ideas get imprinted in our consciousness. Okay, so just as a nail is removed using a nail, similarly karmic imprints can be removed only by jnanottara karma, leading to bhakti, grace, and removal of karma. So bhakti is also an action, right? So here is a beautiful example of removing karmic imprints by doing karma. It is like removing a nail in your soul, in your foot, using another nail. Yeah, so that is exactly the approach here of avoiding karmic imprints. Okay, but then, so before I go to the next one, I thought it will be interesting to look at. Now, I just told you about how this particular verse summarizes the whole of Karma Yoga of Gita. So I thought, let's have a look at what is the approaches, what is the differences of philosophy of Karma Yoga. Now, what is the contextual relevance, and how is this brought about in Isha Upanishad, and how it is brought about in Bhagavad Gita? So let's look at this. What is happening here in Isha Upanishad? Svayambu Manu is having battle with Asuras. And in Bhagavad Gita, our friend Arjuna is having battle with Duryodhana, who is Kali, who is an Asura himself, the worst form of Asura, Kali, and his team. He is having a battle. Okay, so here in Isha Upanishad, of course, it is a battle between the good and the evil. And again in Gita, it is of course a battle between good and evil. But the approaches of how this is taught is very interesting when you look at it as to how they approach it. So if you look at Gita, if you look at first chapter 21 to 23, these are some of the key verses of Bhagavad Gita, which actually sets the tone as to what needs to happen and how Bhagavanta is going to tackle this quite fallacious arguments from Arjuna. What did Arjuna start off with? Very, very misplaced arguments. He started using I, mine. Watch those words in 21 and 23. He says aham. Always he says mama, aham in those verses. So watch that. So our Acharya has actually looked into it, and the Bhashya has discussed this, saying that at that point, Arjuna took this I and mine, a concept of independent doership. He said, Ratham stapayam me, achyuta. Take my chariot there. I want to see my relatives. I want to see all these army. You take my chariot there. See, he is doing that independent doership. That is the starting point for the philosophical teaching that Krishna actually gives to Arjuna. So it's very interesting. Whereas look at it in Svayambu Manu. Svayambu Manu is a total karma yogi. From A to Z, he is a karma yogi, top to bottom. He prays to Lord to protect him with a perfect philosophical approach of karma yoga. That is how the teaching of karma yoga happens in Isha Upanishad. Okay, and of course, Svayambhu Manu, through his prayers, shows us how to practice karma yoga, like how he has done. And the second mantra essentially summarizes the whole of the philosophy of karma yoga. What is happening in Gita? Krishna teaches karma yoga to Arjuna and through Arjuna to all of us. And the main philosophy of Gita is to teach what that karma yoga is in over 700 verses. So the approaches are slightly different. The message is still the same, but see how Arjuna's problem. His problem started by, a false independent doership approach of I and mine. Okay. Swayambhuva Manu does it differently. Okay. So I hope you are able to appreciate those differences, but the ideas are the same. Now the question is, yes, it is all well and good for those of us to practice karma yoga, but what happens to those who do not follow the path of karma yoga? And that is 99.99% of all of us, even all of us included. When we go to work tomorrow morning, one way or the other, we are going to be dragged into sakama karma, okay, or vikarma and akarma. So you can do up all your readings in Gita where it talks about what is karma, what is vikarma, what is akarma. We all seem to be doing in vikarma range much more, I think, these days. Okay, so that is the next verse. What happens to those who don't follow karma yoga? I think this is a beautiful, beautiful verse. I think we got 30 minutes to run through this. So let's see what it says. It says, Asuriya namate lokaha andena tamasa avrutaha tamste pretya abhigachanti yekecha atma hano janaha. Okay. Worth remembering and giving ourselves a reminder every day of our life. I'll read it again. Asuriya namate lokaha andena tamasa avrutaha tamste pretya abhigachanti yekecha atmahano janaha. Okay, easy verses, but so much philosophy that is included in this verse at various levels. Okay, level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4 philosophy in these two verses, and hopefully we will be able to touch some of those ideas. Okay, so let's understand first what Atma is. So I'm going to break for a second and get one of you to explain to us what is the word Atma mean and how have we understood this over the last several years that we have done this satsang as to what Atma actually means. So who wants to take this up? Prahalad, go for it.
Yeah, Atma is mainly tells about the Antaryamin, but it used as a different context. But ultimately, it refers to the Antaryamin inside us.
Thank you, Prahalad. Anybody else want to come in here and give us an idea as to various views of Atma in our Vedic Shastras? Okay, thank you, Prahalad. So I think you captured the level 4 philosophy there, but I will start off with level 1. Okay, Atma in the grossest idea means this whole body. Okay, that is Atma. Okay. Atma also means the middle portion of your body, what the Shastras describe as Sandeha. The middle portion of your body is also called Atma. Your whole body is also called the Atma. Okay, so you start off from very, very superficial and you start going deep inside. The most superficial understanding is this gross body. Sorry. Okay, so the most superficial understanding is the gross body. And then we go to the middle portion of the body called the Sandega, which is also called Atma. And it is in the Sandega area where the Jiva is. So the Jiva is also called Atma. And this jiva is covered by linga deha, and the linga deha is where primarily all the indriyas are. Okay, your eyes, nose, these are all just what our teachers tell us as these are all only magnifying glasses. But the real indriyas are actually in your linga deha. Mind is also an indriya. Okay, so manas is also called Atma because it is in the linga deha that covers the jivas. That is why when you say you think through you intellectualize through your brain, but your emotions are from the heart. So those kind of languages that we use, they all come from the mind, which is actually in the linga sharira of jivas. Then, of course, as Prahalad ji mentioned, the antaryamin who is inside the jiva is primarily called Atma. That is a paramamukya vritti. So it is all dependent on the context in which this discussion happens. So Atma can be body, Atma can be the middle portion of your body, Atma can be your mind, Atma can be your jiva, Atma can be the antaryamin. So that is the first thing that we need to remind ourselves. And then here, to understand this verse, we need to understand the last word. What does it say? Yekecha Atma Hano. Hano means destruction. Hani means destruction. So Atma Hana, destruction of body, destruction of mind, destruction of the soul, and destruction of Paramatma. That is the level in which you need to understand. So what happens to folks who do these 4 different types of destructions, and what happens to their destinations? Okay, so that is the idea of this verse. Yeah. So who is going to take up Gita 6.5, please?
I can do it.
Yeah, go for it, Harish.
Uddharet atmanatmanam natmanam avasadayet atmaiva hyatmano bandhuhu atmaiva ripuratmanaha.
Beautiful, Harish. So it is very, very similar. Where in the Gita 6.5, when this Atma, there are so many times Atma is used. Krishna uses so many times Atma. Uddharet atmana atmanam na atmanam avasadayet. Atma eva hi atmano bandhuhu atma eva ripuhu atmanaha. So many Atmas is used. So to understand what Krishna is telling in 6.5, you need to use the same equation that I put here. Body, mind, jiva, and antaryamin, and understanding the profound philosophy that Krishna has said, which is what Svayambu Manu is reminding us. Okay, because the key there is, again, in Katha Upanishad, we have done this, isn't it? Anybody wants to say this verse? You're familiar with this?
Can I say?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Avidyaya mantare. 1 second. Let me take this Kannada version.
Can you see it?
Yeah. Avidyaya mantare vartamanaha swayam dhiraha pandita manyamanaha dandramyamanaha pariyanti mudaha andhenaiva niyamaya tandaha.
Okay. So there is a very, very major censuring that has happened in Katha Upanishad as well, where he talks about all these mudas, the ignorant people, how the society is, the ignorant following the ignorant, and all these fellows follow this, the ignorant, blindfolded leaders, and they all fall into a deep pit. Hold on to this idea, because this is what this particular mantra in Isha Upanishad is also giving some ideas about how ignorant people fall into the deep pits. Okay, and what are the various types of deep pits? That is what is interesting in Isha Upanishad. Okay, so we'll look at that. So next slide. Now, the next one that you have to understand, first thing you have understood is what is Atma. There are various levels of understanding Atma. Now, another word that you have to understand is Loka. Asurya namate lokaha andena tamasa avrutaha. So loka. Loka means you will say, oh, a place, some loka, Indra loka, some place. Yeah, it is a place of residence. You can say this. So to understand what is it the Svayambu Manu is saying, we need to understand at what levels this loka is being described. Okay, so I'll just do a whistle stop tour on this. So our Paramatma is there in the cosmic waters, and from his womb comes from his navel comes this lotus, and Chaturmukha Brahma is sitting there, and Sri Tattva is here. So this is, as we know, is 100% metaphorical. Okay, there is not a lotus. Before creation, a lotus never came. Lotus happens only after Panchabhutas are created, right? So that is not the idea there. There, the lotus is, this lotus is supposed to have 14 petals, says the Vedas. Yeah, Vishwakarma Shukta. Ajasya Naba, Avadyekam, Arpitam, and so on. So look at those verses. These are all amazing verses of Rig Veda. So there, the description there is the 14 petals on which Chaturmukha Brahma sits denotes the 14 levels or stations of the universe. Ours is Bhuloka, right? Bhuvarloka, Suvarloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka, Maharloka, Satyaloka, where Chaturmukha Brahma is there. So Loka, look at that Loka. So these are all destinations or places. And below earth, what are the places? Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Talatala, Mahatala, Rasatala, and Patala. So says Bhagavatam and so many other Puranas. So 14 lokas. So you can get an idea when our friend, let's say friend, let our friend Svayambu Manu says, Asurya Namate Lokaha, we can think about all these lokas. Then of course there is Naraka lokas. Okay, so Narakas are hellish planets, hellish planetary systems where the jivas, depending on their various karmas, they go up and down. We have learnt all this, right? They go to Swargaloka or they can go to Narakaloka and all that. Okay, so we need to be aware of there are places out there that are called Narakalokas, and apparently there are thousands of those. Not that we want to know more about it, but just be aware there are thousands of Narakalokas that are described. But the Shastras describe primarily 28. In some places 21, in some places 30. But primarily, if you take, for example, Bhagavata Purana, 5th Skanda, 26th Adhyaya. For those of you interested in Narakalokas, if you want to know our destination that we are going to do at some point and check out how that place is going to be, you can go to 5th Adhyaya, 5th Skanda and 26th Adhyaya. So there, 28 hells are described, okay? 28 hellish planetary systems that are described within the material platforms. Some hellish planetary areas are near Yamaloka. Remember our friend Nachiketa, when he went there, Yamadutas took him around and showed him Anupashya yata purve, Pratipashya yata pare, Sasyamiva martyaha pachyate, Sasyamiva jayate punaha. Remember that verse that Yamaloka said, look, all this Kumbhipaka, how folks are being fried. So that tells you that there are also some Narakalokas close to Yamaloka also. So we need to be aware of Narakaloka also when we understand this verse. So all these 14 lokas, and within that 14 lokas, there are Narakalokas, there are Swargalokas also. And then there is, of course, the Bhuloka or Martyaloka, where we are all here at this point doing stuff. Okay. So this whole transaction, the business that happens in these 14 lokas and Narakaloka and Swargaloka is what we call samsara. Yeah, that this is all in the material existence. Then our Shastras also say that these jivas at some point will shed their linga sharira and also go to two different types of destinations. One group will go to moksha, which is the place of eternal ananda, and it is a non-material platform. So that is called moksha. That we are all very familiar, and that is what we want to go to. Okay. Then the Shastras also says there is a worst form of Narakaloka called Andhatamas. Yeah, Andhatamas, Andhatamisram. Okay. There is also this eternal non-material loka called Andhatamas, where the worst of the worst jivas will be there in eternal hells. Okay. So think about these various lokas. There is the moksha loka, there is the samsara loka where swarga, naraka and mrityu is, and then there is the andhatamas loka where all this, our friend, not our friend, our character in Gita, Duryodhana, is going to go to andhatamas. That is his destination. He's a Kali. He will go to Andhatamas. Okay. Where we are going to go, we don't know, but probably we'll be circling around in this particular region, 14 lokas, I think. Some of us may hopefully go to moksha. So think about loka. When you think about loka, you need to have a background about these ideas. Now, here is another major thing that I want to remind, and I'm never tired of reminding us here. When Svayambu Manu is talking about Loka, which is part of the Shukla Yajur Veda, which is an Apaurushaya Veda, which is supreme source of authority, and the Veda has said there are Lokas, then they have to be actually really be out there. It is not some illusion or some unreal Lokas that are out there. They are actually out there, okay? Our spacecrafts, for example, they are traveling. Some of these Voyager 1 and 2, we discussed this before, they've just gone outside our solar system. They are in the interstellar space and they're still traveling at a very rapid rate. That is not an illusion. That is actually there. Yeah, so I just want to remind people here, for some, there are folks out there who think that this universe is an illusion or an unreal, has a third level of reality. I don't know in what way they say third level of reality. It is their problem, not ours. But our evidence comes from the Vedas. And when Svayambu Manu says Lokaha, we assume that these Lokas are there. So that is another philosophy that I wanted to remind you. So think about moksha, Andatamas, Narakaloka, because that is what Svayambu Manu is talking about. Okay. And another concept that you have to understand here is he has also used a word called Pretya. Okay. Asurya namate lokaha andena tamasa avrutaha tamste pretya abhigachanti yeche atmahano janaha. So we have understood loka, we have understood jana. All that needs to be understood here is what are all the perspectives of pretya. Pretya means what? You leave this body and then you leave. That is, then you become a pretya. The question there is, which body? Which body do you leave? And then that is pretya. Is it the gross body? Is it the sukshma body? Or is it the linga body? Linga sharira. So you need to think of these three levels. Stula sharira, sukshma sharira, and karana sharira or linga sharira. Remember the Katha Upanishad? Asya visramsamanasya sharirastasya dehinaha dehat vimuchyamanasya kimmatra parishishyate etadvaitat, that we did that, where we talk about what is deha and what is sharira and so on. So I'll give you a brief idea there. So in our routine samsara, what has happened? We've already got langa sharira, we acquire a stula sharira, and we are doing we are having this current innings in Mrityu Loka and we are doing stuff. When we shed our gross body, that is pretya here. Okay. But ultimately, when we have made our sadhana and our karmic imprints are gone, and then we shed our linga sharira, that is also pretya. So there are two levels of understanding this, of shedding only the gross bodies, what happens to the souls, or by shedding the linga sharira, what happens to them. Liberation is of two types. Okay, so this is a very quick quiz based on the previous slide that we have discussed. So who is going to remind us what are the two types of liberation? One for all of us and one for Duryodhana. That is a clue.
Madhusudanji, it is moksha and andantamas.
Thank you so much, Padmajaji. Excellent answer. So hold on to these ideas. Now, having kind of got the basics and the fundamentals right, we can kind of slide through these slides. Yeah. Asurya namate lokaha andena tamasa avrutaha tamste pretya abhigacchati yekecha atmahano janaha. First atma there is the body, destruction of the body. So yeah, Svayambu says, folks who destroy their bodies, the ultimate way of destroying the body is one committing suicide. Okay, that is Atmahatya, as we call it. That Atmahatya is what Atmahana is. It is the same. So the ultimate form of destruction of your body is suicide. Some folks may be so depressed that they just don't want to live here and may destroy their body. So that is suicide. But there are also many of us who are also doing low-grade suicide. We are destroying our material body, self-harming, abusing and throwing all sorts of stuff into it. You could consider those things also as a type of Atmahana. What happens to them? Tamste pretya abhigacchati. Abhigacchati means they go. After shedding, so this pretya here is, after shedding their gross body, they reach where? Asurya namate lokaha andena tamasa avrutaha. This is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful analogy. Okay. So in the grossest interpretation, Asurya, Surya means what? Light. Asurya means what? No sun. Okay. Surya is sun. Asurya means no sun. Loka means place. Andena means blinding. Tamasa means darkness covered. Okay, that is the literal meaning. Okay, covered by blinding darkness, where there is no sun. What is that? The womb. Okay, so in the grossest way of looking at it, that is, if you destroy your body, you self-harm, you abuse, and you even commit suicide, hoping that you will never want to come back to this world again. You're so fed up with the samsara that you want to commit suicide and give up this body. Just because you wish so, that is not how it happens. You will still come back because you have accumulated millions and millions of karmas. Okay, so based on that, you will get into another womb at some point. Okay, so that is the first level of interpretation. That blinding darkness, andena tamasa avrutaha, is the womb, i.e., implying that we will still be born again and again. Okay, so Asurya here means no sun. Nama is interesting. Okay, there are some folks, there are some interpretations which says Nama is a meaningless word here. Okay, only God only knows how they can interpret this, because every sound, every letter, every word in the Vedas have deep philosophical significance. To say a word actually is meaningless here is actually travesty to Vedic philosophy. The real meaning of Nama there is Nishchitam Yetaditi Artaha. Okay, that is the etymology of Nama there, means certainly. So that is easy for us to understand. If you hurt your body, you will certainly come back again and take birth in this womb. Again the same. Uddared atmana atmanam na atmanam avasadayet atmayeva hi atmano bandhu atmayeva ripuratmanaha. Think about this Gita verse with this example. So that is the first level. The second level philosophy is what? Your mind. Yeah, so now we should be able to make easy progress here. So if you destroy your mind, so what is the destruction of the mind? What is the destruction of our mind? Intellect. Intellect, buddhi, is a component of the mind, isn't it? So what does that mean? Okay, so I am going to ask one of us to recite 2:62-63, please. Who wants to take 62 and 63? Beautiful verses of Gita, chapter 2, that tells us about this.
Shall I, Madhu?
Please, Shilaji.
ध्यायतो विषयान् पुंसः सङ्घस्तेषूपजायते सङ्घात् सञ्जायते कामः कामात् क्रोधोऽभिजायते क्रोधात् भवति सम्मोहः सम्मोहात् स्मृतिविभ्रमः स्मृतिभ्रंशात् बुद्धिनाशो बुद्धिनाशात् प्रणश्यति.
Beautiful, Shilaji. Thank you so much. Buddhinashat pranashyati or vinashyati. Buddhinashat. That buddhinasha is the Atma Hana that Svayambu Manu is talking about. What is that buddhinasha that Svayambu Manu is talking about? To understand this, you have to go to 62 and 63 of Gita and understand how we are doing our buddhinasha every time when that anger steps in, etc. That is one way of buddhinasha, right? So for those who do not exercise their intellect towards the path of Shreyas, but go towards prayers and self-destruction, okay, that is what this verse talks about. What happens to them? Asurya namate lokaha andena tamasa avrutaha. Again the same. So there the meaning of Asurya changes. When you look at the grossest level, that Asurya means where there is no sun, which is the womb, where there is total darkness. But here the Asurya changes entirely differently. So you need to look at the etymology of Asurya. A plus Su plus Ra plus Ya. Su means Sreshta. Ra means Ramana or Ananda. A person who has Ananda is called Surya, whereas he who does not have Ananda is called Asurya. Okay, that is, he who has Dukkha is Asurya. So that is how you derive the etymology of what Asurya there means. Okay. So this person who destroys his mind, and then when he pretya, when he gives his gross body up, when he finishes his innings, what happens to him? Certainly what happens is tamste pretya abhigacchati. Okay, where andena tamasa avrutaha. So those folks who actually misuse their brains with all the wrong intentions and do all sorts of nasty stuff, what happens to them? They again go to andena tamasa avrutaha, place covered by ignorance. Okay, so there tamas becomes ignorance. In the previous example, tamas means darkness inside a mother's womb, whereas here tamas then becomes ignorance. And he goes to those lokas where there is all sorts of ignorance and they are suffering, dukkha. They are having, they are asurya there, in the sense they are suffering, dukkha, naraka, temporary hellish planetary systems. That is where they go, is what Svayambu or Manu is thinking and giving those messages to us. Those who abuse their mind and intellect eventually go to naraka, temporary narakas. If you want to check out all the temporary narakas that are described, please go to Bhagavatam 5th skanda, 26th chapter. That is the level 2. Then you have the level 3 philosophy of actually looking at Jiva itself. Atmahana janaha, those who destroy the Jivas. How can you destroy the Jiva? Okay. How can you destroy? Materialists do that all the time because they think the Jivas don't exist. If you think you don't exist, then you have destroyed yourself. Okay. If you feel you are just this combination of these matter, and that is what gives you consciousness, but you are not a Jiva. Okay. So these are the materialists who are here to make fun and enjoy with their bodies, no different from animals. Yeah. So those are the materialists who don't think about higher philosophies, who just think Jiva even does not exist. As long as we'll do all sorts of things and have fun. What happens to them? Asurya namate lokaha andena tamasa avrutaha. So very, very easy for us to understand here that the same thing that happens to the folks who abuse their mind, the same thing happens to them. What? They go to this andena tamasa avrutaha. Andena means blinding. Tamasa means ignorance. Avruta means covered. So a place which is covered by full ignorance and suffering, hellish planetary systems. Okay, so here I had some ideas about where the soul is in the body. You're all experts on that. The soul is in the middle portion of the body, which we've discussed already. So if you destroy Atmahana, if you don't think you don't exist, then there is no scope for you at all. At least you should agree that you exist. You as a soul exist. That is the starting of Gita's philosophy, right? That the soul is different from the body. If you don't even accept that, that means you have actually done Atmahana. You have actually killed the soul. Then comes our fourth philosophy, the worst form of folks. Who are they? Atmahana. There, the Atma, as Prahaladji mentioned, was the Supreme Paramatma himself, who is also inside us as our Antaryamin, isn't it? We are in this middle portion of the body. The Dahara Vidya has taught us that the Paramatma is in the middle portion of the body. And that Katha Upanishad has said, Anoraniyan Mahato Mahiyan Na Atma Asya Janto Nihito Guhayam. Taittiriya Upanishad also says Guhayam Parame Vyoman. So all that we know that this Paramatma is right inside. Okay. And then through Antaryami Brahmanam, we know that this Paramatma is inside me and he is controlling me. But yet there are folks who destroy that Paramatma. Okay. So what happens to them who destroy this Paramatma? So what does that Paramatma's destruction actually mean? Yeah. So this is an important idea. So how can we kill Paramatma? Yeah. You can't even imagine that idea, but there is a view in Vedic philosophy. What does killing of Paramatma actually mean? Here are the rules. Number 1, God does not exist. letting down the greatness of God. Yeah. When you say he is Gunapurna and Doshadura, and then you say he is Janmadhyasya Yataha Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, when the Vedas exalt him with an abode of infinite auspicious attributes, if we then bring him down and say that he has created a universe which is an illusion or unreal, we are bringing his greatness down. This chap has no qualities. He is nirguna and absolute zero. Are we actually, praising the Supreme, or are we bringing him down? From where I see it, if I say this is a qualityless zero, emptiness, I'm actually bringing down the greatness of God. And the Shastras say, if you bring down the greatness of God, that is Atmahana. And the worst form, in my view, is thinking I am God himself. That is the worst form of killing Paramatma. So, Svayambu Manu is asking us to think about in these 4 levels, Atmahana. And what happens to those who think like that? Asurya namate lokaha andena tamasa avrutaha. So here, that andena tamasa avrutaha has a slightly different angle to it. So we understood Asurya is he who does not have Ananda, he who has only Dukkha. Certainly he goes where? Andena tamasa avrutaha, which is the Andatamas, or the eternal hells from which there is no return. Okay. Andena tamasa avrutaha. The words are very, very clear here. So I've just put this quick revision slide. When we look at Svayambu Manu and we look at the grand scheme of the universe, we've all understood that pre-creation, we are all in Paramatma's womb. And then just before creation, around the time of creation, which is called Sarge, the Jivas come out of the Paramatma's womb. They take 3 destinations. One, they can come to Samsara. The others will cross over the Viraja Nadi and go to Moksha. And there is another batch that go to Andatamas. The 3 routes that the souls follow. And here what Svayambu Manu has said is, he has taken this Andena Tamasaha Avrutaha in 4 different levels and giving us the philosophy of what is happening to the Jiva. So we need to exercise great caution here when we do Shastra Abhyasa and when we do contemplation of Vedic philosophy. Katha Upanishad has said in these verses, we have done this. Mrityosa mrityum apnoti yaiha naneva pashyati. Mrityosa mrityum gacchati yaiha naneva pashyati. Yad yata udakam durge vrishtam parvateshu vidavati. In so many verses, Yama has actually taught Nachiketa of those who bring down God. Okay, who bring down the greatness of God and say he's only got fewer qualities, he is this, he doesn't do anything, he's a useless character, blah, blah, blah. What happens to them? Mrityoho samrityam, that is the death of the death, the worst form of hell, andatamas. Yeah. Look at chapter 16, verse 19 to 20. Could I request one of you to take us through this verse, please? Anybody wants to take the 1920? If not, let's just look at the last line here. Adamam gatim. Yanti Adamam gatim. Adama means the lowest levels, the lowest place where you can be. And he has said all the Asurim. This is in the Asuri Sampat, right? Asurim, look at that, Asurim and Asurya. Asurim Yonim. You can read the rest of the verse, but I just wanted to focus on Adamam Gatim. Even Krishna also tells about folks who have these kind of attributes of the mind, of the body, of the intellect. They destroy their own souls. They have the wrong knowledge of the Supreme. What happens to them? Adamam Gatim. Okay. So the 3rd verse is very, very important because we should be very careful with our approach to contemplation of God. Yeah. And our relationship with him, because our career as soul is at stake here. How do we approach? How do we actually meditate upon God? how do we get the right approach of understanding the knowledge of God? That is what we are after, right? So in the third verse, Svayambu Manu has censured all those who have the wrong approach and concepts of the Paramatma. But now what he is going to do in the next subsequent verses is, he is actually going to give us the right approach of how do we understand the Supreme Paramatma in beautiful sets of verses. And tomorrow, next week, we will do this. Anejadekam manasa javiho nairad deva apnuvan purvamarshad taddavato anyan atyeti tishtati asmin apo matarishva dadati. Okay, so matarishva dadati takes great importance there. So what we will do is next week, we'll try and handle this verse to understand how do we need to approach this Paramatma. Yeah, and there are so many other verses in Katha, Gita, Taittiriya Upanishad, and so on that we bring in and do a comparative analysis, which I hope will be very useful for all of us. Okay, so just to summarize, in the first 3 verses, Svayambu Manu has actually reminded as to what a upasaka has to be. What should be an adhikari? What are the qualities of an adhikari as to how he approaches Paramatma? That is what is dealt with in the first 3 verses. Whereas in the subsequent verses, we are going to understand who is this Paramatma and how do we worship him, how do we understand him. Okay, so on that note, Krishna Pranamastu. I'm going to close today's session and we can do any Q&A if there are any.
Namaste, Madhuji.
Yeah, Jagdish, go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, just a clarification. I'm not sure, Madhuji, but the slide regarding the Atma, where you had the 4 stages, do we also include when after Deha, Hridaya or Sandeha, Manas and Buddhi in between, or Jiva, or are we skipping here mind and just Jiva? Buddhi is also one of our intellect or memory that we also call. Is it in between, or it's just, is it a part of it, or is just that's a Jiva is directly after the mind is a Jiva?
Yeah, thank you very much, Jagdish, for a great question. So when we say Manas as Atma, Manas has got 5 components, Jagdish, as you know. Manas,
Right.
Buddhi, Ahankara, Chitta, and Chetana. So those are the 5 components of the Manas. Yeah, Manas, Buddhi, and Ahankara. Yeah, so when you look at it like that, of course, then you can split even this Manas into 3, Manas, Buddhi and Ahankara, and keep dividing and understanding the philosophy there. But you're quite right. Buddhi is also included in the Manas in that discussion. That is why Buddhi Nashat Vinashyati, as Gita says. And that is also important. Why Krishna said Buddhi Nashat Vinashyati means when an idea or a wrong notion gets into the intellect, it is next to impossible to actually get rid of it. And in fact, Krishna himself has said, isn't it, wrong notions and wrong ideas, never let it pass beyond your mind. Never let it get into your buddhi. Because once it gets into the buddhi, it'll destroy you. So you're right. Buddhi is also included in mind. Thanks. Yeah.
Thanks.
Madhu, this is Harish. I had a question on the Kurvanne Eha Karmani, so that phrase. So, I mean, with the help of Bhagavad Gita, we understand a bit more about the Karma Yoga, but in Ishavasya Upanishad, just if you look at that phrase, I mean, what does it actually say? I mean, is it saying that we have to do service to the Lord? Is that the takeaway? Without the use of Bhagavad Gita, will there be any, will it carry much weight is the question.
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, as you know, Harish, when we do Upanishad Chintana, nobody can think about ourselves. So we have to keep all the Prasthana Trayas. We also still use the Gita. We still used to use the Sutra Prasthana. And we still, we take all that into consideration. And of course, the Bhashyas of our Acharyas to understand what these words actually means. So what we have done today is that Kuruvane Iha Kuru Karmani, we have taken Sutra Prasthana and we looked at Adrishta Niyamat and we understood what that doership of the Jiva is. And with Gita Prasthana, we have looked at Gita, various verses, and as you said, the full elaboration of Karma Yoga is in the Gita. So this is the beauty here. In one platform, you got Prasthana Traya in action. You got the Shukla Yajur Veda here, and you got the Sutra here, and you got the Gita here. And of course, we have to use Sadagamas, right? What are Sadagamas? Anything that concurs with this, which includes all the Bhashyas of all our Acharyas. So when you put all this in the equation, then this particular verse opens up, because we cannot just look at this Kuruvenne iha Kuru Karmani. That is not what this is. Remember what Chandas actually means. Chadayanti iti Chandamsi. We have to break open. Chandas, that is Vedas. The beauty of the Vedas is unless you break it open, it will never show its true knowledge in it. So we have to do that. We have to break it open as per the rules of Vedic interpretation. And we understand that from all the bhashyas that our acharyas have given, and then understand this Kuruvan eva iha. So that iha is very, very important there, Harish. Various schools of Vedanta take up that iha in different ideas. Some say in this world, but Srimad Acharya says iha there means this Paramatma who is in front of you, because that is what Karma Yoga is. That is contextually highly relevant and it makes sense. So if you put all those in the equation, I hope that will give you a correct view of what Karma Yoga that is being discussed in the Gita. So in that sense, yes, you cannot read Upanishads on its own. We have to get all the text to understand it. And that is the reason why we have to be very, very careful with folks who just give a fleeting translation or transliteration of these verses and then complete the Upanishad Chintana. I think we have to be very careful with that. We have to use our acharyas and their bhashyas to understand this in the right perspective. Thanks, Harish, for a great question. Okay, if there are no further questions, could I request Harish to take us through Om, please, and we'll close today's session.
I'm sorry, Madhusudanji. Just a quick another follow-up. This Andena Tamasa Avrataha, you said just an example of Duryodhana. Is it only why we pick Duryodhana, or is it Prahalada's father, Hiranyaksha, Ravana? Are we considering them as a also Andena Andena Tamasa that actually covered them? Because they are one of the Jaya Vijayas actually. I mean, just only by the curse they are Andha. Is that how we can put together?
Yeah, great question again, Jagdish ji. So the Tatparya. So if you look at Acharya's Tatparya Nirnaya there, Acharya categorically says, yes, these are Jaya Vijayas who are in Amukta Sthana in Vaikunta himself. So they are the great souls. So how can they go to Andhatamas? They are actually in the door of Vaikunta. So what the Acharya has settled that problem is that these guys have some asuras inside them. And it is the asuras who are inside them who eventually make their trip to the Andhatamas, whereas Jaya and Vijaya, after they have done their 3 stint in Mrityu-loka, they go back to Vaikunta again. So my advice there is go to Acharya's Tatparya Nirnaya there, and that settles that doubt, Jagdish.
Sure, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, excellent, guys. Thank you very much. Harish, over to you. Hare Krishna, everyone. Take care. We'll catch up next week.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Bye.